Okay, everybody, if we could take our seats, we'll get started with tonight's study session. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We just have one item on our agenda this evening, presentation and discussion on Z24-02, Land Code Text Amendment. I see our Development Services folks down there, and Ava approaching the podium.
I should know that. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Just waiting for my presentation to come up. And as stated, we'll be discussing inoperable and abandoned vehicles. About 2 months, Town Council approved the Community Preservation Ordinance, and that ordinance is now in effect. After using it for 2 months, we did come across one issue that needed clarification and some edits, and that issue had to deal with inoperable or abandoned vehicles. Currently, there is language in the Land Development Code restricting use and in the Community Preservation Ordinance. And what we would like to do is centralize all the restrictions, put them in the Community Preservation Ordinance, and make sure all the restrictions align. To do that, we'll have to edit the Land Development Code. The first time inoperable vehicles appears is in general provisions. And in that section, it says inoperable vehicles shall be located at a business engaged in vehicle service, sales, or leasing in a fully enclosed building or be completely screened from view by an opaque wall taller than the vehicle. We want to keep that language, but we want to, again, put it in the Community Preservation Ordinance so all the restrictions are in the same place. And then we'd like to add language directing people to Chapter 42, Article 8 of the Municipal Code, which is the Community Preservation Ordinance. The second section of the Land Development Code that deals with inoperable vehicles is the parking on single-family residential lots. This has additional restrictions. It states that the inoperable vehicle shall not be parked in a front yard. It can be parked in a rear or side yard when located behind an opaque fence, wall, or gate, and completely screened from view. Temporary fencing is not considered adequate screening. Again, we want to keep this restriction, but centralize it, put it in the Community Preservation Ordinance, and add language directing people to Chapter 42. That brings us to the language in the Community Preservation Ordinance. The exterior premises and vacant land section deals with inoperable vehicles. In that section, you're limited to one inoperable vehicle, and then we would like to add the language and capitalization at the bottom there that's taken from those 2 sections of the Land Development Code. So that would be that inoperable vehicles shall not be parked in front yards. Inoperable vehicles may be parked in a rear or side yard when located behind an opaque fence, wall, or gate that is permanently affixed to the ground and taller than the vehicle. The vehicle must be completely screened from view, and temporary fencing or tarping of the vehicle is not considered adequate screening. So in summary, the current code provisions are not aligned. One section of the LDC allows an unlimited number of inoperable vehicles, and as long as they are screened by an opaque wall. Another section does not allow them in the front yard. And the existing Community Preservation Ordinance limits to one inoperable vehicle. This is on for hearing at the next council meeting. If council adopts staff's recommendations to amend both the LDC and the Community Preservation Ordinance, all the restrictions would be in the Community Preservation Ordinance. Properties would be limited to one inoperable vehicle that is not allowed in a front yard, can be in a rear or side yard, but has to be completely screened from view by an opaque wall, fence, gate taller than the vehicle. So that concludes the presentation, unless there are any questions at this time.
Any questions? Councilmember Bongiovanni.
Thank you, Mayor. Where do trailers fall into this?
Trailers are in a different section of the Community Preservation Ordinance.
Like camper trailers or Trailers that somebody would haul something with?
Yeah, like a horse or car or something like that.
Something like-
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a trailer, well, had a trailer.
Yeah, those are not considered inoperable vehicles, and it depends how they're registered. Some are registered as commercial vehicles, some are recreational vehicles. So we have different sections, of the new community preservation ordinance on that. I'm just seeing if I could find it quickly for you, but this does not change any of the restrictions for those
Yeah,
vehicles.
thank you.
Councilmember Kaprowski?
Could you explain how the ordinance allows for maintenance or working on a vehicle?
Well, currently, you are allowed to have one in the rear or side yard, completely screened, and then you could work on it in your rear or side yard. Of course, you'd have to abide by all noise ordinance, things of that nature. However, you could also, which is not regulated by the community preservation ordinance, have one in your garage or a fully enclosed structure and work at it. That is not covered. Only the exterior is covered by the community preservation ordinance.
So with these changes, we are also trying to restrict any inoperable vehicle from the front yards regardless of the duration of time that
There
they're
is a provision that allows, let me find it here, that it is an affirmative defense to a violation, that the inoperable vehicle is registered to the resident of the property, is undergoing repair, and the total period during which the vehicle was inoperable did not exceed 15 days. So you do have that out, but you could only exercise that no more than 3 times in any one calendar year.
Thank you.
Councilmember Buckley?
Just one quick question is, will HOA regulations supersede these regulations?
I'm looking at our attorney, Chris Payne. I believe HOA regulations can be in addition to our community preservation ordinance.
Yes, Councilmember Buckley, that's correct. The HOA, they can set their own rules because they're private contracts between private parties, so they can have their own rules be more strict or less strict. They can do additional regulations and penalties as well. The HOAs actually have the rights to do certain types of penalties that a city could not do as well.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Vice Mayor Anderson?
Is there a definition of what inoperable means? Is it rolling on wheels or not running an engine? Yeah.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, there is a definition. Let me see if I can find that, just a moment. Inoperable vehicle means any vehicle incapable of being legally driven or a vehicle that cannot be started and moved under its own power.
Okay. Thank you.
What about a vehicle that's sitting on a public street that has a flat tire, that was towed away, towed back, still sitting there, flat tire? Not that I know about this because it's on my street. Not very specific, it's on my street. It was towed away, brought back, still sitting there, and I'm serious, it's been 8, 9 months. What do we do in a case like that?
Well, I don't think that's covered on the community preservation ordinance, as that's on private property. I don't know if anybody knows what we do on our own.
But it's
Right
not
of
covered
way?
because it's a public street, it's on the street. It's on the street in front of somebody's house, yeah. Okay, I will look into that further.
I can find out and have somebody notify you, Mayor.
And this code is, does this code cover, and this is another thing that's happening in my neighborhood right now, somebody has a pod in their yard, you know, a pod. And in 2017, I looked up the code because I was remodeling my house and we had to have a pod. And I believe the code read that you could have a pod in your yard for 30 days. I remember when, I had to say it. You could have a pod in your yard for 30 days unless you pulled a permit that required other work being done within your home, and then you could have a longer duration under the town's code for that. But this pod's been there since before Easter Sunday, and it's sitting in somebody's driveway.
In their front yard. I'm just looking, again, we're all still learning this
I know, this
community
code, so-
preservation ordinance.
And I want to, so I thought I'd ask if that's something that's, yeah. I remember on Easter Sunday pulling out of our driveway and looking at my husband and saying, I wonder how long that pod's going to be here, because at that point it had already been there for probably at least a month. And now it's 5 months later? An ADU. I never see anybody access it ever.
I'm not finding it, but
Okay.
I will look further and let you know. I'm sure it is addressed, if not in here, in the municipal
In the
code.
municipal code. And I just brought it up because it's, you know, something that's is happening in my neighborhood. And I just had another neighbor reach out to ask me about it because a third neighbor now is going to put her house on the market. So she's concerned that this neighbor has a pod sitting in their driveway as she's going to be putting her house on the market and may affect her ability to sell reasonably, which is, you know,
Well, perhaps someone's living in it.
I never see anybody access it. Like, of course, I'm not there a lot, but.
Mayor, Council, Ashley was able to locate that. It's not in the community preservation ordinance, but is there construction going on this lot? Well, during construction, they are allowed no longer than 30 days within a 6-month period. So we'd
Yes,
have
thank
to
you.
see if there's a restriction, if there is no construction going on.
Thank you.
Does it also,
Yeah.
does it also cover, you said you said not registered or inoperable. So does it cover cars that are operable but not registered, no license plates?
Let me go back to the definition. Okay, so it's any vehicle incapable of being legally driven, so you're saying in your case it would be able to be driven, or a vehicle that cannot be started and moved under its own power. So can you legally drive? Yeah, it's incapable of being legally driven, so I'm guessing that would be inoperable because you cannot
minute.
legally drive it.
You can legally drive it on your private property.
So once it leaves the private property, I don't know.
Technically, he's correct. So if you had a property
Yeah,
large
I
enough that you
don't
could
know.
drive it on or on your driveway into your backyard, from your backyard into your garage, that would be legal. But it's not registered to be legally driven on the road.
But could he legally drive it and leave it in his front yard? He could
Boy.
move it from one spot to the other spot.
That's what people do, though. They play a shell game, basically, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that's what it becomes, is a shell game. And forgive me if you mentioned this, because we've just been chatting about a whole bunch of parts of this, but have we been using this code so far? When did it go into effect, and have we been using it?
It is in effect, Kyle or Chris, do you remember the exact date it went into effect?
Because we passed it
It
in
was
June?
approved on June 18th, so was it 30 days after?
Yeah.
So
July 18th,
sometime
yeah.
mid-July. We have started using it because we have had some neighbors that have been waiting for it to be passed, specifically in areas where the backyard is the nuisance.
That's, I thought we might have neighbors waiting for this particular code because they've been having issues for so long, so. And I believe this is one of the codes that we asked to have a report back on in about a 6-month period. There was a couple at the time, so I think about 6
Yes,
months.
Mayor, that is correct, Mayor, Council. We will come back with a full report in 6 months. This was just something that we saw that we felt needed to be clarified prior to the 6-month bar.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any other questions or concerns?
Well, I have one question, and that is, how do you go about getting the pod off the street.
That I'll talk to.
Yeah, just
Yes.
wondering.
We can have code compliance take a look at that pod and why it's there for that long and what's going on.
I never want to be the one to report people. People automatically assume I'm the one reporting them in my neighborhood since I'm the one that's attached to the government. But I don't like to be the one to report it, but now I've had neighbors reach out to me about it, and I am concerned too, because it has been there for a long time.
And we do receive many complaints, some anonymous, through our 311 system.
I don't think we can do that anymore. I looked at 311 online the other day, and I thought it said that you had to, optional, and
I'm not
it
aware
can be
of that
kept, it can be kept in town records, but you still have to put it in.
because there was language on it if you feel that, you know, it would be a threat to
Dangerous,
you, a
yeah.
danger to you, that you can remain
I
anonymous.
did read that. Thank you. Thanks, Ava. Think we're all good
Thank
appreciate
you, and this will be on your agenda at your next meeting for hearing,
for September 10th.
September 10th. Thank you.
Thanks, Ava. Okay, that was the only item that we have on this agenda, so we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting and be back at 6:30. That was a quick one.